Karen Frankel with you again for Get Drawing. How are you all? If you're watching on YouTube, don't forget to give me a thumbs up. There's a little bell that you can click down below which will subscribe you to my YouTube videos. The first thing I'm going to do is show you how I do stick figures based on photographs of other figures, and it's a different kind of stick figure. The usual stick figure is the sort of hangman stick figure with the head and the body and the arms doing something like that. So that's your normal stick figure. But we're actually going to be doing a different kind of stick figure, and this is going to help us with the next sketch. The trick to this system is to draw your spine down like that, and to draw from where the corner of the shoulder is to the other shoulder. So we're going to imagine that I'm not talking about the top shoulder there. I'm talking about an imaginary line that's going from where the arm meets the shoulder and where the arm meets the shoulder. Okay, so we're going to draw a shoulder line there, and we're going to draw a hip line. And his hip line is slightly tilted because this side, his left side, our right side, is slightly higher than the other side. And then we're going to pretend that his leg bone is connected to his hip bone like that, and this leg bone is connected to that hip bone like that. And can you see I've brought those lines in a little bit because I don't want the outline of the pants there. I want that pretend bone that's inside. Now obviously it's pretend because your bones don't go directly straight in the middle of your limbs, although certainly in the case of a finger the bones would be straight in the middle, but not in the case of your arm or your legs. And then I'm going to do this imaginary inside of his arm there and inside his arm there. If I turn off that picture, you can see the stick figure that I want you to try and get, and you can already see the attitude of that figure, and you can get lots of proportions from that stick figure. You can see, looking at that proportion, that the hip is kind of halfway from the top of his head to his the bottom of his feet, rather than the waist. And you can absolutely see an attitude there that I've just drawn over that person. Now have a look at these hockey people. They are crouched down, crouched forward. Both of them are crouched forward, and rather than the other guy was standing up straight. If I draw on top of these guys, you can see that her shoulders are right up there where her head is, okay? And her spine is going down there, her hips are doing that, her leg is doing that. So all the foreshortening automatically happens, okay? And I'll put some arms in as well. Her arms are the least foreshortened. But that section there I've just drawn, that's foreshortened there. And if we do that on her, so this is, and you can see her elbow is right high up here. It's foreshortened, which you probably would not have noticed had you not traced over. And her hand is big like that. Hand's quite big. Her hips are way up here, down to the knee, down to the ankle, down to the foot, down to the knee, ankle, foot, and I didn't put her spine in. And you'll see if I take that away, how cool is that? Okay, so you can totally see the attitude. You can see that the person is hunched forward because the head is over where the shoulders are. So if you've got Photoshop or a program like this where you can do layers, then this is very, very useful. And the last one is the most complicated one that I wanted to show you before we transfer over onto my page. And that is, because she's, I'll just make that slightly bigger. Because she's sitting and she's from the side, we actually can't see what's going on with her hips. Her shoulders, if that's the one end, her shoulders are now foreshortened. The other shoulder is, you know, we can't see the other shoulder, so we're imagining where it is. And her hips go straight back. So both her legs are going to come out of this dot here because her hip, her right and left hips are in alignment. So if you imagine that pen, you know, the front of the hip is there and the back of the hip is there, and it's not turned like that. So we've only got one spot for the hips to be. And if her shoulders were in alignment, we'd only have one spot at the top there as well. Her other arm is hidden as well. We've just got a hand peeking out there, right? So you don't draw it. Or you can imagine that it's going somewhere through the back if she was made of glass. The back line, her one leg would go like that, there, and there's the foot, and the other leg is doing that, but it's going from the same point here, okay? And then her neck is forward. So let's see what happens when we get rid of that picture. So see how that works? We've got a feeling for what's going on with that person. We can also see a bit of perspective happening, whereas this back hand is much smaller than this front hand. So that sort of thing is happening. But that's just to give you the idea. I've got Harry and Meghan there. Even the plastic is not the plastic, the page is shining. So I'm going to turn that light off, and hopefully you can still see. And this is probably going to be easier for you to do, especially if you haven't got a computer program. Doesn't matter if the people are not looking at us. If I put a shoulder across there, hand there, hand, arm, not hand, right? Hips, leg, and we've got Meghan, and we've got her shoulders, spine down to her hips, which I imagine are about there. Now we can't see her knees, but we can kind of work out where they are. And I suppose we can draw down. Oops, what is that? Can't see what that is. Oh, that's her shoe. Goodness gracious, that shoe looks massively big. So the back of her heel is there, the back of her heel is there, and then her foot is there, and her foot is there. And if we take that away, you've immediately got this beautiful attitude of these people. I'm going to segue from this, which is your first little trick to do, into the second trick, or not trick, little warm up for you to get your brain observing and measuring proportions and all of that sort of thing. And the second one is something that I call Michelin Man. And I am going to I'm going to copy more or less one of these figures, and I think it'll just be old Harry there, and I'll extend his arm And he's got his arm, oh, made him a bit too big. Here comes the eraser. It doesn't really matter. It's not about accuracy for this little exercise. It's about how we can be helped in our observation. Okay, so funny feet. Okay, so what are we doing? Why is it called a Michelin Man? Because I am going to put ellipses. So an ellipse is that shape. Oh, you can't see. There you go. I'm going to put ellipses, which is that shape. It's the shape that happens from a round item. When it turns away from you, that roundness goes into an ellipse. And I'm going to pretend that these, his arms and legs and torso are cylinders. And you'll see why in a sec. And the legs, don't make them too thin. We don't want scrawny little legs like that. Could even put some feet on like that. Can you see how I changed direction of the ellipses when the line changed direction? So this line needs to go down the center of your ellipses. And I'm going to give him, even though obviously our bodies, I suppose it depends how large we are not cylindrical, but even if you put a cylinder type shape there, it will help us to see things in 3D. And there we've got our funny looking fat hairy Michelin Man. It's just a bit of fun that helps us to see the form. So just a reminder, the word form describes three-dimensional things, and the word shape describes a two-dimensional shape. So at the moment that's a two-dimensional ellipse that I've drawn there, and if I do that, I've now drawn a three-dimensional cylinder. Okay, so that is your second little exercise to get your juices flowing. Moving on to number 3. This time we're going to make our images, our people, geometric. And this is a really, really good technique if you are doing some cafe drawing, if you're out and about and you want to get down some quick shapes. It's generally useful for people that are a bit further away, not standing very close, and you just want to capture a quick image. And this is using geometric shapes. If you want to, I guess you could put this on top of your what are these called? Stick figures, if you'd like. But I'm just going to do it freehand. Let's see, hopefully you can see what I can see. Good. Now, I'm not tracing off now, but what I'm trying to ascertain is these shapes without thinking about whether it's waist or bum or hips or anything. Okay, so I'm putting an oval shape for the head. I'm putting a square or oblong shape. I'm going to put an oblong shape for her skirt. There's another oblong shape there. There's that sort of shape. She's got much, much nicer legs than I'm drawing. This is just about getting an idea of geometrics. Now, I've drawn this way too big. When I usually do these little sketches, these box figures, I usually do them pretty small, and they're just in a little diary, a little visual diary, just changing the shape. And that's pretty much all we need. Okay, and I like to quickly triangle there, sleeve there, sleeve there. Even this is going a bit big. Skirt there. Sort of a slender triangle there. Okay, so it is just establishing really, really quickly what that figure looks like. This trick is turn it upside down trick. Okay, so often we struggle, and if we turn things upside down, they are so much easier to draw, even portraits. So there's a couple of reasons for that. One is because your knowing brain will tell you that things look like you think they look, rather than observing them. And it's really hard to to separate what your brain is telling you and what your eyes are seeing. So even drawing a portrait, even though you know it's a nose and an eye and mouths and that sort of thing, if you turn your portrait upside down, it'll be much easier to draw, because your knowing brain kind of says, oh, I don't know what to do with this, you get on with it, seeing brain. Now I know there's a tree there, which I can use as my as a reference point. I'm also going to use that shape thing. So I'm looking at what shape is that. I'm trying not to see it as an arm with a hand on the end of it, okay? So I'm going, that's straight there. As always, I am trusting the process. So yeah, that's a sort of a jelly bean shape there, I think. And now this shape there is almost just an egg shape like that. And my head is screaming at me saying, oh, that's not going to turn out to be a koala. This shape here is a round or a square shape, and it's about the same size as that. And the side of it is continuing on that line. So I'm doing, is it about the same as that? I think I might go even bigger. I'm looking at negative shapes as well. There's a bit of a beard or moustache sticking out there. And then there's this fluffy bit sticking out there. And if they really do look like those koala toys, don't they? They are not called koala bears. They are not bears. They are just called koalas. So I've basically got the shape of our koala. You can see how I work. I just draw lots and lots of lines, and then hopefully it'll get better. I can see that his eyes are, or her eyes are, at the same level as where the ears are. So his eyes are there, and his snout is in the middle of that, and in the middle of that, or halfway through that. So I'm constantly going, how big is this compared to that, even in this sort of quick techniques. And I think we might basically have our koala. So I would never have drawn, I don't think I would have drawn that sort of round shape. I've just noticed that there's some claws in there. It's a very, very dark picture. that I picked on the spur of the moment, but upside down is always a very good technique. Let's see how we have succeeded. Better turn that one upside down as well. Yeah, he looks quite cute. I quite like that shape of his arm. It's looking a bit fat now that I've turned it round, so we can modify a bit. And we can put some shading in now. But you can see we have basically got our little koala quite nicely. His eyes are actually going at an angle like that. As usual, I don't want to take too long. This was just to show you how good it is to turn things upside down. Hello, Diane. I'm glad you think it looks great. Now his body might be a bit slim there, but you can see basically I got that down pretty quickly by the shapes that I showed you in the last section, and also so the geometric shapes, but now turning it upside down. I really recommend that you practice your shading not necessarily on an object, and in fact for this little trick we're not going to shade on an object, okay, not on a real object. So the purpose of shading, just to remind you all, is to create the illusion of form, the illusion that there is something three-dimensional on our two-dimensional shape. Practice your mark making so that you can vary your mark from close together, so this is quite a thin pen, from very close together to gradually getting lighter and lighter and lighter. The way I want you to practice your shading is to create an imaginary three-dimensional, they're always imaginary if they're on a two-dimensional piece of paper, a cube, something like that. We are going to have 3 different shades depending on where your light's coming from. If the light is coming from the top, or the top left, then the top is going to be our lightest surface, that's going to be our darkest surface, and that's going to be somewhere in between. So I'm going to do a hatching mark. Now, I could have left that light. I've just realized that I said the top was going to be the lightest. But it's the lightest for our cube. It's not necessarily the lightest there is as in the white paper. And what you'll practice as well when you do this is directing your mark so that it is appropriate for whatever the shape is that you are drawing. So at the moment those are more or less the same shade. So now I'm going to, this is our darkest shade in this, on this side of the cube. Okay, so that's pretty dark, but I want to go one level darker, so I'm going to cross hatch diagonally as well. Now, cross hatching is one of the most traditional marks to add shading, particularly if you are working with pen, because as you know, you can't press hard with your pen, and therefore it's more difficult to show your difference in dark and light. Okay, so now that side is the same tone as that, and it was one of the reasons that I added a third mark here, is because I knew that I was going to cross hatch here. Now you can tell that the top is your lightest light, that's the second light, and that's the darkest. And you can play as much as you like with these. You can use squiggles as your mark. And you might decide that your darkest dark is in a different place. Okay, I've done that pretty dark. For the purpose of this exercise, it is better, I want you to use the same mark for all three sides, because otherwise you won't learn to darken the mark. And if you're drawing on the same object, you should be using the same mark, just getting darker. So this one, I'm going to have to go many more circles to get this getting darker. I'll have to be here a while. And because I did that sort of a level 2 toning, this one I'll probably just do like that. And my light source will be coming now from there. Karen Frankel signing out for another Friday.